everybody. The summit is going to begin in 5 minutes, so please make your way to the main stage. The summit will begin. The program, the keynote speaker, the panel discussion will begin in 5 minutes. Please make your way to the main stage.
At NAIT, we honor and acknowledge that the lands on which we learn, work, and live is Treaty 6 territory.
This place is a traditional homeland for the First Nations and Métis peoples, and today we all are part of this treaty land.
The traditional name of this place is Amisquichy Waskegon, which we also call the city of Edmonton.
There is a long history that has brought us to be on this land. At NAIT, we seek to learn from that history and the lessons that have come before us.
And to draw on the wisdom of the first peoples in Canada who have lived on this land from time immemorial.
Through this land acknowledgement, we have an opportunity and responsibility to reflect on the impacts of colonialism, historically and currently.
Only through learning can we move forward in truth and reconciliation and to a better future together.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Terry Schlitter, and I have the honor to serve as the Dean of the NAIT School of Health and Life Sciences. I want to extend a warm welcome to our keynote speakers, panelists, presenters, researchers, health innovators, students, participants, and industry partners who have joined us for today's Advancing Healthcare Through Simulation, a provincial summit. Before we kick off today's program, I want to take a moment to introduce myself and tell you a little bit about our school. Although I have just started my time as dean, my career at NAIT spans over 24 years, and watching the remarkable evolution of our school and the advancements in technology and simulation have been nothing short of inspiring. My dedication to NAIT is driven by our unwavering commitment to excellence in healthcare education, innovation and continuous improvement, and strong partnerships with industry. I truly believe in the work we do within the school and the profound impact it has on our students and the healthcare ecosystem. The School of Health and Life Sciences plays a critical role in educating our health professionals who serve in communities across Alberta and Canada in various sectors, such as diagnostic imaging, medical laboratory sciences, paramedicine, respiratory therapy, and dental services, just to name a few. With passionate instructors and staff who are experts in their field, state-of-the-art facilities, and a focus on hands-on training, NAIT ensures that graduates are well prepared to enter the workforce. The impact of our graduates is truly monumental, resonating throughout the healthcare system as they bring their expertise, dedication, and integrity to essential roles ensuring the well-being of our communities. At NAIT, we are fortunate to have one of the most remarkable simulation centers in Canada, the Centre of Advanced Medical Simulation, or CAMS as we call it. We are very big on acronyms here at NAIT. CAMS plays an important role in the education of our students, providing the facilities and expertise needed for our health programs to design and deliver impactful simulations that reflect real-world clinical practice and enhance the students' educational experience. NAIT also fosters interdisciplinary collaborations amongst students from different programs. The center enables students to work together in realistic scenarios to strengthen teamwork, communication, and ultimately patient outcomes. By integrating interprofessional simulation-based education, we ensure students are well prepared to enter the workforce, addressing Alberta's need for highly trained healthcare professionals. These collaborations extend beyond our school, connecting with other areas across NAIT. One example you'll see today is the CAMS Digital Twin, a project brought to life by the NAIT Digital Media and IT Capstone team. This is a must-see for today's event. It is a real-world application promising a far-reaching impact across industries and communities. I want to also highlight that CAMS is more than a hub for student learning. The center offers a customizable environment for small to medium-sized enterprises looking to conduct research for wellness, health technology, and medical devices. Innovators and researchers can use simulation to test ideas, pilot new products, and explore advanced concepts, bridging the gap between prototypes and real-world application to support advancements in healthcare technologies and development of creative solutions for healthcare challenges. The summit is a collaborative effort to bring together experts and leaders from across the province and Canada to demonstrate the various ways simulation can impact and enhance healthcare education, workforce readiness, and health innovation. Throughout the day, we'll hear from several leaders in simulation. Our panel discussions, research presentations, and breakout sessions will offer insight into emerging trends in simulation. I'm confident that today's discussions and insight will inspire new innovation and collaborations. It's a privilege to have you here today as we explore and share ways to advance healthcare through simulation. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our Master of Ceremonies for today's events, Carmen Leibel, former news anchor turned entrepreneur and proud NAIT alumna. Carmen helps people of all ages communicate with confidence through her business, Project 5. Please join me in giving her a warm welcome.
Well, good morning. How is everyone today? Yes, I love the energy. I'm going to fix the microphone here, make sure we're good. Welcome, welcome, welcome everybody to this fantastic event, Advancing Healthcare Through Simulation, a provincial summit. It is so wonderful to see all of you in here today. Months and months of planning and work, as you can imagine, has gone into bringing everyone here together. Can we give a huge round of applause, please, for those who worked so hard to make this happen? This really is a unique event. My name is Carmen Leibel, and I am a proud NAIT grad myself. I went through the radio and television program here. I worked with CTV mainly in Edmonton in broadcast journalism for about 17 years. I was a health reporter for a number of those years. So I got to be in a couple of simulation environments myself. I'm looking forward to learning more from the experts who are here today. And I was a news anchor for a number of years, but if anyone asks me, well, people do ask me, what was your favorite job in the newsroom? Absolutely being a health journalist. So I'm looking forward to meeting some new experts today, being a part of this. Thank you so much for having me. I'm now a local entrepreneur, and I am truly honored to be here as your MC and one of the panel moderators. Also joining me today is Katie Wallace. Can we give a round of applause for Katie on the side here? Give a wave, Katie. Hello. Katie is a radio and television student here at NAIT, and she's going to be coming up on stage delivering a few announcements a bit later on. So you'll hear from Katie today as well. A special thank you to all of the sponsors, the speakers, and organizers who have worked so hard to make this summit possible. As all of you know, events like this don't happen without sponsorship. So we're going to say a little thank you, maybe hold your applause until the end if you wouldn't mind. Community sponsor, Edmonton Regional Innovation Network, ERIN. Platinum sponsor, Elevate Healthcare. Gold sponsor, Applied Pharmaceutical Innovation. Bronze sponsor, Bio Alberta, Education Management Solutions and MedTech Canada. And this is an important one. We have a coffee sponsor, everybody. Thank you to HSAA. Let's now give a huge round of applause. Thank you so much, of course, to all of the exhibitors as well. Please, please, we will have a lot of time to take some breaks so you can walk around, check out the booths. So many, as you I'm sure have already noticed, throughout the main floor here and upstairs as well. So featuring simulation educators and suppliers, health innovation service providers, and academic institutions. So those are all on the main floor, so you know. The health innovator and student showcase displays are all upstairs. They're ready to chat with you. They're ready to show you what they've been working on. So do take some time to soak it all up and meet everybody who's here today. Also on your badges that you're wearing right now, on the other side, there is a QR code. I see all of you looking right now. That's great. Everybody's listening well. I love it. On the back, just scan that QR code. There are all of the details, the program. Also, when you see some speakers up here, you can click on their LinkedIn profiles. That is on the program as well. You can learn a little bit more about the keynote speakers, the panelists. They are going to be here throughout the day too. So if you want to further the discussion with them, do so. They would love to connect, network, talk about collaborating. That is what this day is all about. Today we have gathered to explore the transformative power of simulation in healthcare education, workforce development, and innovation. As Alberta faces evolving healthcare challenges, simulation has emerged as a critical tool for enhancing competency, supporting workforce readiness, and driving cutting-edge innovations in the industry. Throughout the day, we're going to hear from leaders in government, regulatory bodies, healthcare organizations, post-secondary institutions, and industry as we engage in thought-provoking discussions, expert panels, and keynote insights. You all made the decision to come here today, so soak it all in. Be a part of it. Meet everybody who's here. Have important discussions, connections, ask questions. That's why you're here today. Take full advantage of the opportunity that is in front of you right here, right now. Connect with fellow professionals who are passionate about shaping the future of healthcare through simulation. Okay, let's take a little run through of how the day is going to look. We do have an agenda. It's a pretty tight schedule. It's going to be a whirlwind. By the end of the day, you'll be like, whoa, what have I been through? All of these sessions and panelists and keynotes and discussions. So there are 4 themes. Each is focusing on a different aspect of simulation in healthcare, of course. The first one is the morning session. We're going to be exploring how simulation is used in education. The second one, our midday session, is going to focus on workforce readiness and the role of simulation in building a skilled healthcare workforce. The third one, we are going to be talking about digital twin technology. Can I be honest with all of you? When I first started to work on this event with the team, I was like, what is digital twin technology? And I have learned about it, and it is fascinating. I'm so looking forward to that panel discussion and the presentation that's going to be on the stage today. That's happening at lunchtime. And then our final discussion, our 4th session, will be on simulation as a driver of health innovation and digital technology. Are we looking forward to this? Yes, awesome. Yeah, round of applause. Throughout the day, you can also check out the Discovery Lab pitch competition. So that is happening in the Dow Theater right there to the right of the Starbucks. You can head in there throughout the day and check that out. In addition to the main stage sessions here today, there will be a lot of them. We invite you to explore the research programs and presentations that are happening throughout the venue, which we've already spoken about. There are breakout spaces. So in the corner over in that direction, there's a sign. There's a breakout room where there'll be all kinds of different topics and discussions. So be sure to check that out at some point. While student and health innovator poster presentations are upstairs on the 2nd floor. Don't forget to join the guided tour of CAMS. I was on this tour a couple of weeks ago, and it was fascinating to see all that could be done. And we talked about the future. There's so much more that could be done. And that's a big part of what we're talking about today. So do not forget to go on the guided tour of CAMS. One last note, men, this is for all of you in the room. Between 11 and 2 today, the man van is here. The man van will be testing for prostate cancer. So from 11 to 2, take the opportunity. It's going to be happening out in the CAF parking lot. If you don't know where that is, make sure to stop somebody and we can absolutely lead you in the right direction. Okay, are we ready to get started? Let's give one last huge round of applause. We need to get the program going. Let's do this. Our first session of the day is titled Enhancing Competency Through Advanced Simulation in Healthcare Education. Platinum sponsor Elevate Healthcare is now going to provide some opening remarks to introduce our first keynote speaker of the day.
On behalf of Elevate Healthcare, it's an honor to welcome you to today's summit. As the platinum sponsor of this event, we are proud to stand with you. Whether you are a student, a clinician, a leader, and a change maker, you are shaping the future of healthcare through simulation. And at Elevate Healthcare, our mission is simple: to make the world safer, healthier, and more productive, and to help clinicians deliver confidently in the moments that matter. We provide end-to-end simulation solutions from advanced patient simulators as well as AV integration, all the way to expert training, education, and healthcare consultation. Our tiered approach ensures that each organization receives the support that they need. I'm excited to welcome you to today's session where we're focusing on competency, and that's where Elevate Healthcare simulators and our team really shines. We offer an extensive range of realistic, physiologic responsive simulators designed to meet learners where they are and to help take them to the next level. Whether they're a student practicing their very first assessment or a seasoned provider responding to a code or a complex event, our simulators support the complex realities of healthcare today. And our newest solution, Evo, has a modular design of voice modulation as well as realistic sounds that promote both efficiency and diversity. Our Maestro physiologic engine takes this further, reinforcing clinical decision making, strengthening critical thinking, and giving learners a realistic sense of how their actions impact outcomes. And what makes the difference isn't just our simulators, it's how they're implemented, supported, and evaluated. So come spend some time with us today at booth 10 and 11. We're excited to meet you and get to know you a little further. It is now my pleasure to introduce our first keynote speaker. We're so grateful for his commitment to advancing simulation and for sharing his perspective with us today. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Tim Willett with our keynote session, Simulation in Healthcare.
Thank you, and thank you, Stacy. Perhaps she's watching this remotely today. My name is Tim Willett. I'm the president and CEO of Simulation Canada, which is a national network of healthcare simulation centers, just like this one at CAMS. I was really, really honored to be invited to come join CAMS today because this is a unique and a special event within the healthcare simulation ecosystem. What NAIT has really done a phenomenal job of today is reaching out, well, first mobilizing the simulation community across Alberta, but then reaching out beyond that simulation community to engage industry, to engage the innovation sector, to engage government and regulators, and bring them together today to talk about, to learn about the incredible things that we can do with simulation. So congratulations to NAIT for that outward looking approach to advocacy and engaging others in what we do. I live in Ontario on Treaty 27 and a quarter territory, which is the traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. Treaty 27 and a quarter was first created in 1819, signed in 1822. And it was an agreement between the Crown and the Indigenous peoples in the area to surrender 2.7 million acres of land so that the Rideau Canal could be built. For this, the Crown paid £2.10, which in modern dollars would be the equivalent of about 405 Canadian dollars per person for a maximum of 257 people. I live there with my family. I have 3 children where I endeavor to teach them about stewardship of the land. Simulation Canada is the connector of healthcare simulation programs and personnel like this one. There are over 200 simulation programs in Canada at hospitals, universities, colleges, paramedic programs, and other places. We have 69 official members, but reach about 4,000, 5,000 people across the country who are working in the healthcare simulation space. A lot of our role is about promoting the benefits of simulation, but also enhancing the quality of simulation itself through conferences, through professional development, and through resources and supports for those working in simulation. At our national conference a year and a half ago, I presented this slide. I was being somewhat cheeky at the time, and I knew this was a bit of a extreme statement because our healthcare system is facing a lot of challenges, and certainly simulation alone is not going to solve those challenges. But it is part of the solution, and it has to be part of the solution, which brings us to why we're here today. And I hope by the end of my talk, by the end of the day, you will see how simulation can be a solution to all kinds of different challenges in all kinds of different places within and beyond healthcare. Today, we're talking mostly about the healthcare context, but we've seen that the techniques used in simulation, the impacts it can have, the principles on which it's based extend beyond healthcare, into the trades, into social services. And we're starting to see that growth and engagement beyond healthcare. So today we're going to be talking mostly about the healthcare context, but please know that these principles and these strategies can apply well beyond healthcare. One of the challenges we've realized recently we have within the healthcare simulation community, and this is a challenge even at global meetings we have, is explaining to people outside of the simulation community what simulation actually is and what we do. So I wanted to start with the real basics with the definition that simulation is a technique. You're going to see a lot of technology today. The technologies enable simulation, but simulation is the technique of recreating some aspect of reality, either for education or for system improvement. And you'll see all the ways that that can happen. When we deliver simulations, it's almost always coupled with a pre-brief beforehand and a debrief afterwards. Whether that debrief is being used to help learners consolidate knowledge, to get feedback on the situation for system improvement or process improvement, the debrief is a critical part of the simulation experience. We talk about simulation modalities as the ways we make simulations happen. Some of these are physical. So around this slide, you'll see things like physical task trainers for learning to do procedures or physical examinations. You'll see simulated environments like a mock laboratory setting. You'll see the physiologically enabled mannequins that can do incredible things, and you'll see some of them with our exhibitors as you wander around today. A lot of simulationists work with people, actors who are trained to portray patients or other healthcare providers who are in a certain situation or facing certain challenges. These are often called simulation participants or standardized patients. And these can even be hybridized. So that photo in the bottom corner you see there is a standardized patient portraying somebody in distress while giving birth, paired with a birthing simulator so that skills at the same time. And where we're seeing a lot of growth, and what you'll see a lot of today as well, is in the virtual side. Virtual simulations are growing exponentially, and because of AI, XR, and other technologies, their capabilities are growing incredibly quickly as well. You'll see virtual manipulatives or imitation virtual replicas of real equipment or machines, like an anesthesia machine here. There's a lot of use of virtual patients, which are screen-based simulations like games that students can play through. More and more of these are becoming powered by AI so that the characters in these simulations can be conversational in a natural way, either through text or through voice. Some of these virtual gaming simulations are almost like a choose your own adventure. So there you can see a node map of how a student might play through one of these. Virtual reality, extended reality are being used increasingly, and sometimes even paired with that image in the middle. What you see there is a surgeon learning in virtual reality paired with haptic instruments that provide the same tactile feedback as you would experience in an actual surgery, pushing on the instruments. I also want to distinguish between two different applications of simulation. We grew out of, and historically in Canada for about 20 years, there's been a strong history of educational simulations, using simulations with the goal of helping individuals or teams improve their skills, improve their competency. And that's still being done in increasingly amount. It's becoming increasingly important and absolutely critical for healthcare programs across the country to include that kind of simulation in their educational programs. We've also seen incredible growth in system-focused or translational simulations. And these are simulations that are run not for the sake of improving the skills of the people, but improving the system itself and testing clinical spaces, testing protocols or procedures in order to determine how they could work better. Where are there latent safety threats and how could these be improved? One of the most powerful things that these all have in common is one, they create a safe space in order to practice, potentially make errors, and they create a place where you can try again and improve. That combination is incredibly powerful for expediting learning and for creating culture change and behavioral change. So back to the reason I'm here, simulation as a solution. And over the next few slides, I want to show you a taste of all the different ways that simulation is helping to improve, particularly in healthcare. So this is a bit of a whirlwind tour. You've heard about the three main areas of focus today, so we're going to walk through those three as well. Simulation for workforce readiness and preparedness of individuals and teams. Simulation as a solution for the health workforce crisis, and simulation as an enabler of health innovation. So first, let's talk about workforce readiness and preparedness. There's tremendous evidence now that simulation accelerates learning. When you bring simulation-based learning into an educational program, you prepare students ahead of time, you let them go through simulations, you debrief them. That journey, that learning curve is expedited. It increases confidence of students so that when they get out to their clinical placement or when a graduate enters their first job, they feel more prepared and ready to hit the ground running. When applied to interprofessional learning or team learning, simulations improve team performance. This has been demonstrated extensively in the critical care sector, where we see crisis resource management and crisis communication and teamwork being improved through simulations. But this extends equally to other sectors in primary care, in other settings where interprofessional communication is absolutely critical to good health outcomes. Simulation-based learning can be contextualized too. So historically, we saw a lot of simulations in the acute care emergency space. Now we're seeing so much happening in ambulatory care, in primary care. We're seeing simulation labs that look like homes or other settings so that simulation learning can be contextualized to where healthcare providers are going to be working. When you do your tour, you'll see healthcare simulation rooms that are built in ambulances. You'll see rooms where projectors on the wall can turn it into any space that you want it to be. You'll see a room that's set up like a restaurant or a bar. So we contextualize that learning to where our students are going to be working. Simulation makes healthcare or education more accessible. And this is an incredible point because when simulation started and the focus was on bringing people to a simulation center, which is a lot of what still happens, that did create some accessibility challenges for students or learners who are distributed in other places. But now with the incredible technologies we have for virtual presence, for telemedicine or teleconferencing, and with using technologies like virtual reality and extended reality, we can actually bring people together across space and time better than we ever could before. And this is actually making immersive simulation-based learning more accessible to students in rural and remote communities, to help schools, to help healthcare systems support their students and support their workers, even in rural and remote regions where they can connect in and feel that sense of connection and immersion and support through education. And simulation can also help prepare a workforce for a very rapidly evolving and somewhat unpredictable future at this point. I'm sure everyone in the room who works in healthcare innovation feels a little unsettled because it is really hard to know what the future looks like 10 years ago or 10 years from now. Even 10 years ago, people used to talk about what the future of healthcare looks like, how things are evolving with some level of confidence. I find it harder and harder to do that because things are changing so quickly. But we do need to know, we know that our graduates do need the skills to be able to learn and adapt and implement new technologies, new strategies, new way of providing care quickly in their careers. Second thing I want to touch on is the health workforce crisis. So looking at this more at a systemic level, simulation is becoming critically important to increase our capacity for domestic healthcare training. Our health workforce crisis is kind of a double-edged sword. On one hand, we are short healthcare providers because there's not enough healthcare staff, stress is high, rates of burnout are higher, mental health challenges are higher. And professionals just don't have the bandwidth. Organizations don't have the bandwidth to take on students and monitor them and coach them the way they would in a more traditional clinical placement mentorship type of model of training. You'll see evidence today that as we shift from a traditional clinical learning model based entirely on clinical placement to one that's based on a hybrid of clinical simulation plus clinical placement, not only are we increasing the capacity to train students because we can take on as many or more students in the face of diminishing clinical placements, but the educational outcomes we're achieving are as good, if not better, using this hybrid approach. This decreases the demands on provider institutions and allows us to maintain our health workforce development. Simulation could also play a critically important role in helping internationally educated healthcare providers practice in Canada. This is true from the perspective of credentialing and assessment and helping foreign trained healthcare providers demonstrate their preparedness and their skills to practice in Canada. But very importantly, I can't imagine how intimidating it must be to be a foreign trained healthcare provider dropped into a different country's healthcare system, where you have to learn how the system works, what all the subtle social expectations are of providing simulation or providing healthcare in a different country, learning the language used in healthcare, which is probably not your first language. So simulations are being used to help acclimatize people and help them transfer contextually their skills in healthcare from where they learned to practicing in the Canadian context. There's been some really interesting work around retention and job satisfaction and mental health and resilience in the workforce, where there's been demonstration that simulation-based education initiatives, ones based on resilience and targeting resilience specifically, can help build resilience in the workforce. But what's really important on top of that is that simply providing simulation-based education, just-in-time training to your healthcare staff in a hospital makes them feel more supported, more prepared, brings down the stress level, and can help with retention. There's studies even by Sandra Goldsworthy here today. I don't know if Sandra's here. Sandra, many of you know in the room, she's now at Mount Royal University. She did a study on this, actually at nursing retention in ICU following simulation-based education. So it has meaningful impacts on health workforce sustainability as well. And the final point here is that simulations are great for bringing new people into healthcare and exposing young people to healthcare careers. We see simulation growing in the high school sector, where an increasing number of high schools are implementing simulation labs to start training people, exposing them to healthcare professions earlier. We see labs like CAMS doing tours for healthcare students so that they can learn about healthcare professions that are otherwise kind of opaque to the general population, and getting people excited and interested about in healthcare careers. And the third focus today is on expediting innovation in healthcare through simulation. The first thing I've touched on already is using simulation for system improvement directly, running simulations to test new spaces as they're being designed and built. Using simulations to test protocols and procedures to find out where things just don't work so they can be fixed before you have a patient coming through that system and encountering that problem. You'll hear about how simulation is being used in medical technology innovation as well. And I'm so happy that there's so many from the business community and the innovation community here too. Simulations can play a role in helping to design products and testing out prototypes early in safe environments. They can be used in the development process to help refine those medical devices and how they're used. They can be used as in part of the testing and validation process in order to get them regulated and on the market in Canada. This is interesting. I've seen simulations being used as part of the procurement process, where healthcare teams are asked to test out different medical devices in a simulation to find out which one works best for their team in their setting and expedite procurement. And then once a medical device is procured, it has to be adopted. That requires a culture change and behavior change in a hospital system. And we see simulations being used to help teams learn how to integrate new technologies into their workflow. The AI, the gaming, the XR industries are booming right now, especially in Alberta. It's so neat to see organizations like Elixir here today who focus on advancing the role of extended reality in education. And with the accessibility and advent of large language models now, this is just taking off exponentially. We see people using computer modeling in silico simulations to solve system level problems, to do health workforce modeling, to test out different models of care, like primary care, to test out what if we expanded the role of certain healthcare providers to do certain tasks? How would that alleviate pressures on other parts of the system? And would it be a cost-effective measure to implement? And for attracting investment, both in healthcare and in healthcare innovation, we can use labs like CAMS to demonstrate the power of simulation. A couple quick footnotes to this. First of all, everything I've said is backed up by now years of research and the experience of thousands of people across the world using simulation. From the scholarly side, and I didn't want to get too much into the research, but I did want to bring it up and let you know there are now thousands of studies on simulation-based education and simulation-based quality improvement in healthcare. I see, I would guess, about 30 new publications coming out every week relating to simulation, and that the innovation in the simulation world, the evidence for its impact is just continuing to grow. And the other footnote here is that simulation is now a field unto itself with its own best practices, its own techniques, its own skills. What I'm listing here are the healthcare simulation standards of best practice. These are globally recognized interprofessional standards for good practice in simulation. A keystone of all of this is professional development. And people working in simulation have a specialized skill set and need specialized training in order to create and deliver and debrief simulations. And that's part of the role that Simulation Canada plays. It's part of the role that a lot of other organizations play in building that capacity, that simulation educator workforce. We call them simulationists, so that they can continue to build quality within simulation and expand the boundaries of simulation. I hope that's given you the whirlwind introduction you need, given you ideas. Hopefully I've touched on some things that resonate with the work you do in your role, whether you're with a regulator, with the college, of the university, with government, with industry. I'm around for the day. Please feel free to come talk to me, pick my brain. I'd love to meet you, ask any questions. And again, congratulations to NAIT for putting this together. Thank you to everyone who took time today to be here and engage with the incredible diversity of people in this space. Thank you. No, I think that's what that timer's going, maybe, yeah? I think we've got time for some questions, if there are any. If not, like I said, grab me anytime. Is there, okay, so there's a microphone just on the side there.
Hello.
And we would like you to use a microphone because we're capturing all of the audio feeds for recordings and live stream. Maybe both.
Hi, my
Hi.
name is Kate Ellis. I'm working with the government of Alberta within the Ministry of Health. One of the questions that I think is really pervasive in healthcare these days is the impact of kind of medical biases or medical racism within the context of care and how that impacts patient outcomes. And I'm wondering if you think that there is a role for simulation to play in the training, not only of new grads coming into the health system, but even existing care providers and kind of addressing some of these biases and kind of building a system that's more responsive to the needs of everyone.
Yeah, so short answer is yes, absolutely. And that's a brilliant question. So simulation, yes, incredibly powerful for technical skills, but its power, its applicability outside of technical skills to those interpersonal relationships, to dismantling racism and colonialism, not only on that interpersonal level, but even on a systemic level, there's incredible opportunities. We see work being done looking at enhancing equity, diversity, inclusion, anti-racism within simulations. And we see a lot of people using simulations to address issues of racism and bias in other systems as well. I think part of the challenge is that, and I'm saying this as a cis hetero white male, absolute person of privilege, is I have the luxury of not experiencing racism, right? I have the luxury of not experiencing microaggressions. Simulations are a way of opening people's eyes to those problems that they may not experience otherwise and helping them learn. More important, I think, than helping foreign trained providers know how to manage or respond to microaggressions is helping people already in the system learn what they are and avoid them in the first place. So yeah, I think incredible opportunities there.
Thank you.
We have time for a few more questions. Don't be shy. Come on up. This is your opportunity.
All right, I will wrap up now, but feel free to grab me anytime today if you'd like to chat. Please do.
Sometimes it's a little nerve-wracking in front of a large audience, so I understand. So I'm sure people will pull you to the side. Can we please give a warm round of applause for Tim? Okay. We are now going to have a panel discussion. The panelists have been waiting in the wings, so let's get everybody out here on the stage. Are you having a good morning so far? Yes, good, wonderful. So here's how it is going to work. We are going to have a panel discussion talking about simulation in education. Then we are going to allow you time to explore the area, go on a tour, check out some of the booths. There's going to be a presentation up here. So we'll have about a 20-minute panel discussion. It's going to be a fantastic conversation with some experts who are making their way. So come on up to the stage. Let's give them a round of applause as they make their way. You could bring that with you off stage again. Have a seat, everybody. I'll come over here. Would you want to go there? Okay. We didn't talk about our seating plan. Here's how this is going to go. I'm going to introduce each panelist. Panelists, I'm going to give you 30, 40 seconds to give a little introduction about yourself. I thought that would be more fun rather than me sitting here reading a bio. You might as well hear it from the experts. So we will start at the very end of our panelists here. Roger Crow with Bow Valley College. Roger, tell us about yourself.
Sure. I'm with Bow Valley College. I'm the manager.
Roger, a little louder if you wouldn't mind.
I'm the manager for healthcare simulation and technology there. We've got a very large 1,300 learner practical nursing program. And so everything we do is on a fairly large scale. So that's give you some context of our experience.
Wonderful. And just a little note for everybody who's up here with a microphone. When we need to project our voice a little bit for each of the panelists. Is that okay? Okay. I know there's a little misconception when we have a microphone that we don't need to still project our voices. Okay, we have next Allison Cooper with Red River College Polytechnic. Allison.
Hello, I'm Allison Cooper and I'm the simulation manager at Red River College Polytechnic in Winnipeg.
Thank you so much. Brady, I skipped over you, so sorry. Brady Rose from NAIT. Hello, Brady.
Hi, I am a registered medical laboratory technologist as well as an educator. I have been creating, embedding, and utilizing simulation in my courses now for 13 years.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I thought when we're talking about simulation in education, we have to hear from a student, right? So we are going to be hearing today from Amber King, who is a NAIT student. Hello, Amber.
Hi, my name's Amber King, and I'm a recent graduate of the X-ray Tech program here at NAIT.
Wonderful. And last but certainly not least, Norbert Werner with Covenant Health. Hello. Oh, I heard it. You got like a whoop at the back. Oh, did you bring your family?
Brought my family, yeah. I see some of my old students out there already heckling me. I can see you back there, Elliot. So my name is Norb Werner. I'm with Covenant Health right now, overseeing a rural simulation program across the province. And I'm also an advanced care paramedic for a few years.
Just a few. Okay, round of applause for our panelists. So As we all know, simulation is a very important environment to make mistakes in a safe way. And Roger, I'm going to start with you if you wouldn't mind. So you often reference Sully on the Hudson when we're talking about a learning environment. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure, happy to. So the whole idea of simulation is that we provide a controlled, safe environment for learners to make mistakes rather than out in the real world. So about 10 years ago, we had a blinding illustration of this, and it was a beautiful illustration that when things go wrong, people can either respond with, I don't know what's happening, I don't know what to do. Or if they've been exposed to it previously and have worked through it previously, the response is different. And consider that situation that was alluded to. Fellow hit a flock of birds departing from the airport. His response wasn't, I don't know what's happened. I don't know what to do. His response was, I know exactly what happens. I know exactly what to do. And here's what we're going to do. And everybody walked away without a scratch. And that's the power of simulation.
And we watched Tom Hanks go through that very scenario. Thank you so much for that. Amber, maybe I'll turn it to you. As a student, what was it like being in that environment and knowing that you would learn from these mistakes? But obviously, there's still a lot of nerves in this. So what's it like from a student perspective?
Well, CAMS is absolutely nerve-wracking. I remember I was sweating with anxiety. And there's also like a secrecy to simulation. You don't know what you're going into. You don't know what kind of role you're going to be thrown into. Going off of Roger, where you get to learn from your mistakes, I was put into a simulation where I walk into the room and a patient has escaped restraints. Obviously, that's not something you want to be, that's not a situation you want to be put in when you are out in the real world and not knowing what to do. It could be very dangerous. And it did follow me throughout my whole clinical career. I did end up utilizing what I learned in those simulations to always know where my back is turned, know where my escape routes are, know where the emergency security buttons are, that sort of stuff. So I think simulation was really important for us as students.
Were the nerves a lot different the second time?
No.
Heading into? No.
Absolutely
Okay.
not.
No.
It will always be scary.
It will be? Is
Yeah.
there anything that could make it easier on you as students? Like, is there anything that you would change or suggest?
I would think just kind of knowing more about it when you're going into it. So we do have like a little prompt before you just get thrown into the room, which I understand how simulation is trying to emulate how you don't know what you're going to be put into as a care provider with a patient. But even just simulation day, it's blocked off as like simulation day. Figure it out.
That is nerve-wracking. I get that. Maybe Brady, I'll turn it over to you. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
we have a question from Norm.
just want to make a quick comment around emotion-based learning. I'm hearing this thought of making a mistake, experiencing a mistake. Where's your emotion during that time?
Yeah.
Any comments to that? Are you happy, elated as you make a mistake, or what's the emotion you would describe?
It's a little embarrassing. Like you're making mistakes in front of your peers and in front of professionals, but at the end of the day, you are getting that professional and peer feedback. So I think just kind of putting that to the side and understanding that I'm here to learn is what you need to do as a student.
Yeah, I remember doing a simulation as a student in the continuing education world, actually Sherry's team, and I gave the same drug. Well, I gave two different drugs intravenously. One was supposed to be subcutaneous. And my emotions after was, whoa, what did I just do? But I'll tell you, I'll never make that mistake again. And that's the beauty of simulation-based education. I would never have got that out of a PowerPoint. I would have totally missed it had I not received that information in the debriefing. And I will never make that mistake. But my emotion-based learning moment was, yeah, I made a mistake and I won't forget. Just want to make a comment about that.
Absolutely. That's
No, for
exactly
sure.
how that felt.
And Brady, yes, take it away as an instructor too.
Definitely. And I just wanted to point out for those who aren't familiar with simulation, what Norbert did right there was debrief that emotion and that experience very quickly. You know, how are you feeling? What did you learn from it? That kind of a thing. but definitely the nerves that students feel are something as an educator I know and I experience it, right? I can empathize with them. If I told you all after this session, we're putting you in a room, it's a communication type situation, networking, you should all be comfortable doing that. A group of people are going to watch you. Once you're done, we're going to pick at everything you did, every decision you made, everything you felt. Talk about what you did well, which is really hard for some people, as well as what you maybe could do different the next time. All of us are probably starting to get a little bit nervous and stuff like that. And so, with that understanding and empathy towards that experience, one of the things that I try hard to do, and it's relatively new in the world of simulation, debrief used to be all that we talked about, but like last year, I learned way more about the pre-brief and have tried to spread the gospel of the pre-brief kind of a thing and the importance of it. And what a pre-brief is how you set those students up. And so it's that information from day one of your course, telling them what simulation is, why they're doing it, and then the specifics of the sim that they're going to get into. As far as not just that little blurb that you get right before you walk into the room, but what were you told a week before? Were you told, prep these things? Here's the outcomes of that simulation. Here's what I'm expecting from you. I don't necessarily expect to see your technical skills in this one. We're focusing on your communication and your interaction. And really ensuring that there's psychological safety of the participants, making sure they can actually get the benefit out of the simulation that you want them to. You know, by doing ambush sims, you might not actually get the experience and the growth and the learning that you want because you're too worried about the experience to actually test your abilities in that environment. You know, we know that eventually you're going to walk into a room where you have no idea what's happening, but we don't need to do that on the very first day of simulation.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, you're getting a round of applause for that because that's really important for the students and their mental health throughout this scenario. Obviously, over time, simulation has evolved and improved and gotten so much better, of course. And Allison, your quote was, "We're not just working with mannequins anymore. Vet techs are also a part of this." So can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Well, at Red River, we're really focusing in on interprofessional simulation. So not just working in those silos anymore, not just playing with our dollies in our little labs anymore. It's really more about that whole experience, working with the whole team, being able to communicate with that whole team. And yeah, not just nursing, not just medicine, but really all of those professions working together, communicating together, really for that output of those students that can work together in a team.
What are some of when an institution brings on a simulation edition, what are some of the barriers? I know I see some of you laughing because I'm sure there are a number of them. You need people, you need instructors who understand and want to be a part of it and learn. So I'll open it up. What are some of the barriers when an institution wants to use this?
May I?
Please.
So VR, virtual reality, it's a very hot topic right now among simulation community. It's one of those things that it's easy to purchase, easy to acquire, difficult to implement. There's lots of data around it supporting its use, and it's a great technology. But it's one of those things that your program, your staff, your learners, your physical layout needs to be prepared for it. It's very, very important. And so consequently, there much work needs to be done up front in terms of the adoption, the implementation, and then eventually the integration into your existing curriculum and your facility, your staffing and everything else. So that's a good example of it.
Yeah, I see another barrier that occurs a lot is, you know, as an educator, we have these great ideas and everyone is here looking at simulation as potentially solving problems, and it can really solve a problem, but there is a baseline knowledge and skills that any simulationist should have. Like, you should understand what a pre-brief is, how to facilitate, how to debrief, how to implement, how to embed, how to build simulations. So there's a professional development component, even for people who see the passion, see the benefit and everything like that. And that professional development isn't one course, one time. I think I took my first simulation course 13 years ago, and I'm still learning so much. Like the Dunning-Kruger effect is so real when it comes to simulation. The more I know, the more I'm like, I'm just stepping on it now type of a thing. And then it's not just the people, but like you had said, it's that ongoing continuous support. Just like anything, you need to have the proper continuous investment in something in order to actually get the benefits out of it and those returns. You can put forward a project and develop a simulation, awesome, it's done. But there's equipment, there's maintenance of the equipment, there's consumables, there's the person setting it up, there's the person facilitating. As an educator, I might not be the subject matter expert, so now I need to have a subject matter expert come in to help with a debrief on some of those things. And you can't expect people, even if they're passionate about it, to donate their time continuously without compensation. You need to have a quality system to ensure that they get evergreened. We have virtual simulations that I've spent hundreds of hours building with a programmer that lasted a year and a half, 2 years, because then the server needed to be updated, the programming code was out of language, and we didn't have the money to update them. So they're gone now.
Simulation is expensive. That's the biggest barrier to everything. It's expensive time-wise, it's expensive monetarily, but the return on that investment is gigantic. So it's more than 100 people in a classroom with a PowerPoint presentation. This is true hands-on learning where you actually see the benefit and you can actually make those differences in that student, in making sure that they are prepared in those situations. So it's expensive, but worth it.
Just to bounce off a few more things is the concept of simulator versus simulation. For me, that was a huge barrier when we first started simulation at NAIT. Was a lot of people equated simulation to a mannequin, as we just heard from Allison. But people spend $250,000 on a mannequin, a simulator, but they forget about what a simulation is in terms of the rich context, the contextual learning that's required, the smells and the sights and the people, the equipment, all these other elements that paint a clinical picture. So if we want to give simulation a good name, a great name, you have to think simulation, not just a mannequin or just a simulator. I think that was a huge barrier. And once we got past that, we realized, oh, we can use an actor. We can use computer-based simulations, et cetera, other multimodality approaches. But think simulation, not simulator. And the other barrier for us was the idea of how are you actually using simulation in the curricula? So is it for formative assessment, summative assessment? Is it for experiential learning, patient safety, culture building, whatever it might be, but know why you're using simulation intelligently, wisely, and optimally in your curriculum again.
It is a tool, and just like any tool, you have to have the right tool for the right job, 100%.
Yeah, the sights, the smells, the sounds. Amber, what's that like as a student when you go into that environment and it really feels quite realistic in that situation? What's that like from your perspective?
It is terrifying. There is a very vast difference between walking into a room and seeing a mannequin versus an actor. When you go in with a mannequin, it doesn't feel real, like you said. But when you go in with the actor and they're able to respond to you and change how the outcome is going to be, that's when it gets really terrifying. Like, for example, with that patient who escaped restraints, he was able to manipulate the outcome however he saw fit. And then another example would be the mass casualty simulation that I participated in. That one was intense. It was all real actors, people were screaming, there was sights, there were sounds, and I didn't realize how much I didn't know until I went into that situation. So it was very vital for my learning, for sure.
I appreciate your honesty, by the way. It's like, it was terrifying, but that does sound terrifying. So obviously they did an excellent job setting it up because it felt so realistic. Did you have something to add there, Brady?
Yes, but I almost forgot. No, but like you're right. When it comes to the simulations and kind of touching on what Norbert had said as well about simulation versus simulator, right? Like we can sort of give those cases on paper and have students sit there and work through them. And some people will say you can have a paper-based simulation, but really a good simulation needs to touch on all three of the domains of learning, right? Like your senses, your emotions, tactile, like everything needs to sort of be incorporated. Because as an educator, students will say the right answer on an exam, but may not do it in the moment because of those other things that are happening. And one of the things that we try in our sims, because they are just for that formative learning and stuff like that, is that you as a student can't fail a simulation. Whatever you do is what you do, and we're all here to learn from it, to grow from it. So there is no failing our sim. There's some outcomes that would have been worse in real life than others, right? But those are learning our choices in that chaos and those moments. And on the flip side, the only simulations that can fail is when we fail the students in setting them up properly or fail that support that we get from them.
Norbert, you've had some really great conversations with students before a simulation about their workforce readiness and then after. If you could elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, in 2011, I believe it was, a long time ago, we did a mini research study all around the perception of readiness to practice in paramedic students. These are senior paramedic students. And we actually removed 1 full week of clinical time from their practicums to run them through, we called it a hell week, to be honest. It was a sim week. We threw them through 20, they did 20 simulations, 5 a day for 4 days straight. Huge bags underneath their eyes. We did a before and after survey of their perception of readiness to practice, and we had about 25 questions. So for example, if you were to be starting a practicum today, ... would you feel comfortable doing a surgical airway or managing a difficult airway or X, Y, and Z? You can imagine what those scores looked like before and after. So we really saw a huge improvement and increase in their perception of readiness to practice after the sim week. Lots more confidence shining after that week, a lot of more smiles, more energy, more enthusiasm to head out and meet a real patient. Interestingly though, there were a few students that came back and said they were lacking self-efficacy in certain situations. And I kind of want to point that out of the beauty of simulation where, yes, we can boost competence and confidence, but sometimes we expose the gaps through simulation of our curriculum. So some of those students who came back said, hey, I actually feel less prepared from doing that sim. Why? Because they actually saw what their gaps were. Had they done that in a real situation, there would have been perhaps a fatality, a failure. There would have been perhaps a negative outcome. So the beauty of sim, once again, was for them being able to catch that, allow them to do self-reflection and close that gap before they go and practice on our loved ones.
We have 1 minute left. Did you have an addition?
I want to offer a comment based upon what you've heard here. We've been discussing the educational aspect of simulation here. The important part, the end result of all this in theory is the downstream effect is patient safety. Better trained healthcare professionals and better systems all contributes to patient safety. That's the end goal, and that's the ultimate downstream effect here.
Can we give a round of applause, please, for our amazing panelists? Good job, everybody. Thank you so much. Once again, they will all be here throughout the day, so please stop them if you have questions. We don't have time for a Q&A at this time, but they will be here. Also, you can learn a bit more about them on your lanyard there. There's the QR code. You can look at their bios, look at their LinkedIn profiles. Here is what is going to happen. You have 30 minutes to explore the space. I will go through the options for you. On this stage here, yes, there are a number of options. On this stage, there's going to be a research presentation happening presented by EMS. Jonathan Duff is going to join us with simulation-based assessment, AI, and beyond. there is going to be a breakout session. So that is happening down there. There's a big sign, there's a room, I believe it's in a classroom, and that is presented by EMS. Tom Waring is going to be discussing developing simulation scenarios and objective-based outcomes approach. You also have this time to walk around, look at the different booths, go upstairs, meet some of the students, or head into the pitch competition that's happening in the Dow. Or, yes, a lot is happening today, I know. You'll have time throughout the day to do it all. Go on a guided tour of CAMS. You have to do that at some point today, but don't worry, you'll have multiple opportunities. So, one last note. Please mark your watch. Come back at 11 o'clock because we'll have another keynote, another panel chat. So you have about half an hour to go explore. We'll see you all then. Thank you so much.
That worked for you? Oh, you want to shake my hand? I'll give you a hug. Thank you.
Oh, you guys are.
You did great.
Thank you. Thanks for all these. Really, really good. Thank you. Thank you so much. Jonathan, are you ready? Thumbs up. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to welcome Jonathan Duff to the stage, who is going to be speaking on simulation-based assessment, AI, and beyond.
Okay, yeah, small group, excellent. All right. So what I'm going to do for the next sort of 20, 25 minutes is we're just going to talk a little bit about assessment and where simulation fits into the realm of assessment, and then talk just a few minutes about what some of the future things might look like. We've got, I've heard some of the people already talking about the various technologies that are around, AI and these other things, and how does that impact how we assess? Okay. So we're adult learners. That means we have to have a list of objectives. So what we're going to talk about is a bit about just generally assessment. I'm freakishly tall. It's a problem. We're going to talk generally about assessment, and then a little bit about some assessment terms that you might have heard, and then how that can relate to more advanced forms of assessment, thinking about other technologies and techniques that we can use to do this. Anybody ever got this email? Yeah, I have. Yeah, it's the end of the day part that I love the most is like, yeah, just get me something in a couple of hours. That would be great. Okay, thanks. So we heard from the plenary this morning. We heard from the panel that just went through how simulation can be so effective, such a psychologically safe place to learn, to grow, to develop. And then we talk about assessments in simulation, which sort of puts all of that on its head. This idea that now what you do in the simulation room actually matters in some degree, in some context. And sometimes that can be a very low stakes thing. Sometimes that's just I'm going to give you some feedback about what you did well and what you didn't do well. But sometimes that's more high stakes. And so, for example, if you want to be an anesthetist in Canada now, you have to do a whole series of simulation-based assessments and sims to make sure that you're competent to be an anesthetist. Other programs are adapting that. We already had some of that with standardized patients, but now there's more mannequin-based sim that's coming into effect to capture that. And sim can do a lot of different things when it comes to assessment. So if we think about this group here, I can look at a whole bunch of things. I can look at this person. I can make have a discussion about this person's competence in whatever construct I'm trying to assess. I could look at these people. I could look at their teamwork. I could look at how they function, how they communicate, what their leadership skills are like, all of these things. Or I could even think more broadly, and I can think about the system. How is all of this working together? How are all these pieces working together? I just came from, I work at the Stollery Children's Hospital. We have a simulation program there, and we were just reporting some data to our quality group. And one of the things we found during one of our mock codes is we had a piece of equipment that the battery lasts about 3 minutes. And nobody really knew that because it was the first time we'd used it outside of the ICU and not plugged in. And fortunately, it was a plastic baby, so they didn't care, but it helped us identify a systems problem. I've seen people use this for things like setting up a new hospital, building new crash carts, all of these things to identify system-based problems. So we're not looking at individuals anymore, we're looking at bigger things. So let's talk for just a couple of minutes about assessment. I know it's a horrible topic to talk about on a morning, but here we go. A little bit about what makes an assessment good. And finally, what could it look like? Like, how could this all kind of interplay when it comes to simulation and some of the new technologies and techniques that are coming around? Because this is early. So assessment and measurement basically is pretty straightforward. And I know this it's kind of a terrible thing for us to think of as educators, but at the end of the day, assessment is about rank ordering our learners or our systems or our teams. We're trying to figure out who's doing well, who's struggling, what their gaps are, how can we address those gaps? All of that is part of assessment. So we don't necessarily think that we do this every day, but if you've ever done sim, you've done this. Because at the end of the simulation and you're walking into the room to do a debrief, you're thinking, okay, what am I going to talk about? What did they do really well? What did they really struggle with? How am I going to make this work? This is not new. So this is Sim 1. This is the first mannequin simulator. This was a anesthesia simulators developed, I think it's Stanford, I want to say. As you can see, it was very sophisticated as to the equipment they were using. This is the 1960s to build this thing. So when we look at, you go across the way to the vendors and see how technology has expanded. These guys were using barcode scanners and circuit boards and all kinds of things trying to make this mannequin work. But it allowed anesthesia trainees to practice doing things like bag mask ventilation, administering medications, all the things that we would expect an anesthetist to do. And even these guys back in the 1960s realized that, yeah, this is great. We can use it to teach, but we can also use it to measure and see how our students are actually performing and give me maybe a better idea of how they're going to be once they hit the real world. So our job as educators, as simulation experts, as program directors, program administrators, our job is to make sure, especially in healthcare, that the people that we're having leave our programs are well trained. And when we were in medicine, when we were switching over to a competency-based model, I had a friend who was part of the Royal College. It was his job to kind of go out into the world and show people this new model, this idea that you had to demonstrate that you were competent as a physician before we would pass you, which seems like a really basic concept, but it was new and challenging. It wasn't, in the old days, you did your 4 years of residency. The assumption is once you've been in a residency for 4 years, you're good, and then you go write an exam. And if you pass the exam, off you go. So he asked his program directors, he went across the country and asked all these program directors who run residency programs. He said, I want you to think about what percentage of students that you've graduated in your program that you would be happy to have look after a loved one. What percentage of those students would you be happy to look after one of your loved ones? Do you want to take any guesses what the number was on average? No, you don't want to know. 20%. That was actually a high estimate. It was closer to 10 to 15, which is horrifying. But this is why we need to think about these concepts and think about these things. So if I've got a flock of people and there's one person in there that needs a little bit of extra help or maybe a lot of extra help, my job as an educator is to make sure that I'm doing those things before they're unleashed upon an unsuspecting populace. And this is one of the ways we can do that. And this is why assessment is so critical to everything that we do. Now, you can't have an education talk without a pyramid. It's impossible. I dare you to try. This is Miller's pyramid. It's talking about different types of assessments and different kind of skills that you can get at. And at the bottom, it's really easy. Do they know something? Well, that's easy. I can just ask them, do you know what the etiology of DKA is? I'll give you a multiple choice exam. I'll give you a short answer exam. Great. I know that they know something. But the next part is I want to know that they know how to do something, how to apply that knowledge in some way. The next step, I want to see that. So not just on paper giving them, hey, you've got a 47-year-old man coming into your emergency department with polyuria and polydipsia, what do you want to do? But actually make them demonstrate what they're going to do in that situation. And ideally, at the top, they actually do it. A colleague of mine who's a paramedic, now a PhD, but started as a paramedic in Ontario, he did a big study looking at paramedic readiness. And he looked at paramedics all the way through school until their first year of training, after their first year of working on the job. Because he wanted to see the assessments that they were doing in their paramedic schools, how well they were translating to those paramedics functioning on the job. And some of them functioned quite well, and some of them didn't function quite as well as far as their assessment strategies they were using. There was a big study in nursing looking at using simulation to replace nursing hours. So instead of being on a ward, you're in a sim lab. And they followed these folks up for a year after to see how they would perform. So not just, oh, they know how to put an IV in or they know how to do this, but they actually do it. So that's the level of assessment that we sometimes need to be able to get to. So what are the things that go into making a good assessment? And we won't go through all of these in great detail. We literally could spend a day or many, many days talking about the fundamentals of assessment. We're just going to talk about some really basic concepts because they keep coming up. And if you think about that email that we talked about at the beginning, it's like, I need to know if this student is good enough to do X, Y, or Z. These are the kinds of things we need to be thinking about when we're building an assessment strategy around that, okay? And this is probably the biggest one. Who's heard this word before? Yeah, okay. This is what I always think of when I hear this word, because people think of it in different ways. They use it in different ways. We've used it in different ways, and that does not help anything, okay? So validity at the end of the day is all about meaning and interpretation, okay? So my daughter, who's 16, comes running home from school. Well, she doesn't run anywhere. She's a teenager. My daughter loafs home from school. And when I finally convince her to tell me something about her day that's not just fine, she tells me she got 93 on a math test. Is she good at math? I don't know. I need to know a lot more before I can say she's good at math. What was the test on? What was the content? Was this trig? Was this algebra? Was this surface area? What was this? What was it out of? Is that a 93% or was it out of 400? What type of test was it? Was it all multiple choice? Were there short answer questions that you were applying? There's all these things that go into this. And what we're doing when we're doing an assessment is we're making a judgment. I know that sounds hard. As learners, as educators, we never want to be judgmental, but you have to be judgmental. You just don't have to be personally judgmental. You just need to judge using good judgment. So I need to make a decision. Is my daughter good at math? Well, what validity talks about is the evidence that I have to make that decision, okay? If you're a clinician, there's other ways to think about this. The other way to think about it is as a lawyer. So I'm a judge or a jury on a case, and somebody comes to me and says, I've got this person, I have eyewitness testimony, I have fingerprints, I have DNA, I've got 2 people that tell me he's got a motive, I know that he was on the scene. These are all pieces of evidence that I'm using to make a decision about what this person did or did not do. And I'm going to weigh that evidence heavily or not as heavily based on what kind of evidence it is. If I have eyewitness testimony, I don't care because I know eyewitness testimony is terrible. If I have DNA, maybe I care about that a little bit more, but there's other things I need to ask to know what that was like. For clinicians, we do this all the time. So a patient comes into the emergency department and they bruise a lot. Are you going to give them chemotherapy for their leukemia? Well, maybe. If you're on house, yes, you would have already done it. You probably would have broken into their house and likely been sleeping with one of their interns. But for us, we need to figure that out. So we're collecting data, we're collecting evidence to make a decision. This is what assessment is, and this is what validity is all about, is collecting data to make a decision. And that, when you look at your assessments, you're looking at what am I collecting? What sorts of evidence, what levels of evidence do I have to say that this learner is good or not good at the particular construct I'm trying to assess? All right. There's a number of different validity frameworks that you're going to see or read about. One thing that I ask is if you're ever using an assessment tool, whatever type of tool, you're trying to figure out, okay, I need to figure out if my learners are good at this skill or that skill. Remember, think about where that tool was used, where was it developed, can I apply it? There's no such thing as a validated tool. That doesn't exist. All it tells you is it's something that people have used and were happy with. They had some evidence that it worked. Might not work in your context. Okay. How much evidence do you need about how good your assessments are? Well, that depends on what your purpose is. If I'm running simulation with my ICU trainees, and well, tomorrow I'm running simulation with the peds residents, and we're doing simulation on some kind of basic acute care stuff in pediatrics. Low stakes. All I need to do when I'm doing my assessment of them is what do I need to give them feedback on? What did they do well? What do I think they struggled with? I need to give them feedback. Their program director is never going to hear anything about what happened. I don't write any of it down. It doesn't really matter for their career in any way. But let's say I'm at the Royal College and this is their high stakes peds exam that they need to pass before they finish and become a pediatrician. I need to be really confident in my decision. So I need to have some strategies about how I'm going to collect data, how I'm going to examine the data, how I'm going to correlate the data to make sure I'm making a good decision. Okay. The other way to think about this is on the one end, the chef tastes the noodles. Are the noodles good enough? That's formative assessment. Summative assessment, I give the noodles to my customer and then they taste the noodles. That's when it really matters. How much evidence I need is dependent on my purpose. And it's not really a one or the other. There's a bit of a flow here. So just because I think something is very low stakes, if I walk into a room after a simulation and I tell a learner, hey, you're really struggling about X, Y, and Z, there may be consequences to that person. It might not be in their program, it just might be in their self-esteem. So I need to make sure that whatever decision I'm making is a reasonable decision. Okay. Other parts of validity, reliability, and I promise this will be the end of the psychometric terms after this. Reliability is such an important part of what we do and our assessments. And all reliability basically means is the signal to noise. Am I capturing what I think I'm capturing with this test? If in a perfect world, if I could take you and run you through the same test 1,000 times, would I get the same answer 1,000 times? In the old days, you used to be able to tell people what reliability was because you'd ask them, what time is it? And everybody would look at their watch and everybody would give you an answer that was within 10 minutes of each other because nobody sets their watch the same way. That doesn't work anymore because we all get our time from some satellite hovering over San Diego. But you get the idea. Reliability is about, does the test tell you what you think it's telling you over again? Is it reliable to do a test and then a retest? So some other things that we need to think about, and I'm not going to go into these in a lot of detail because we could be here for literally days, but we also need to know that whatever assessment we're doing has to be feasible. Like in an ideal world, I would take my PEDS residents and I would run them through a week long. Somebody was describing it on the panel as hell week. Like, that's great. Like you could get so much data, so much information, so many different ways that your students are interacting with the world. That's not always feasible. I don't always have 5 days that I can pull my students out of the hospital and make them do a whole bunch of sim. So I need to think about what I'm doing and is it enough? And is it going to be something that I can actually accomplish? Can I take little bits of that hell week and create like hell afternoon? And that will give me enough information to tell me what I need to do. Assessment, a good assessment has an education impact. Who's walked out of an exam and knew something after the exam that they didn't know before the exam? Yeah, it's happened. The worst are those multiple choice questions, like which one of these are true? And you look at them as like, these are all false. And you finally pick the one that seems the less false, and that one turns out to be true. You learned something doing that exam, all right? That's a good thing. Assessments should be catalytic. Assessments drive curriculum. How many times have you been, if you're a teacher, how many times have your students said to you, hey, will this be on the test? Because that's what they want, that's what they care about. They want to know, do they really need to know this, or are you just talking? What you assess is what you need to teach. That's what they're going to pay attention to. That's what they're going to learn. One of my favorite sets of simulations that's fun to do is typically when we're doing sim, especially on a topic that's a little bit new or a little bit rare, is I'll spend like 20 minutes talking to my students about this topic. So let's say, believe it or not, for a while there, the Royal College insisted that I, as an ICU physician, knew how to manage a child if they'd been struck by lightning. It's like, okay, I'm probably never going to see that, but I need to apparently teach people how to do that. So I would spend 20 minutes showing them, okay, this is what it means to be struck by lightning, and this is what it can look like, and this is how you would treat it. And then I'd put them in a sim, and there'd be a baby who's got some soot on them. It's like, okay, that baby's been struck by lightning, go fix it. And they'd come back and we talk about it, and it's like, whoo. But, and there's evidence to suggest this is true, it's probably better to do it the other way around. So I put them in a sim with a baby who's got soot on them, and I say, this baby's been struck by lightning, go. And then they have to work their way through it. And when we sit down and do the debrief, boy, do they have more questions, because now they know what they didn't know and what was hard. And now they're paying attention, and now they have something to hang it on. For those that are healthcare providers, you've been out in the field, you've seen a patient, you're like, oh crap, I learned about this in school. I don't really remember what to do next. And that's why ChatGPT exists. But afterward, you went back and looked, and you will never forget it because now you have something to hang it on. So this is what a good assessment can do, is it can give us something to hang on to help us remember. Finally, it has to be acceptable, not only for your team, your program, but your learners. If your learners walk out of an assessment and say, well, that was stupid, I don't think that captured anything that I know, nobody's going to buy into your assessment. When we talk, I heard at the panel, they were talking a little bit about the pre-brief before a simulation and talking about everything here stays here. Like simulation is like Vegas with less alcohol, you know, everything's confidential. That's not really true when we're doing assessment, but part of the pre-brief is now I'm going to do my best to give you a scenario that can make you show me your best. I'm going to make this as easy as for you to perform the best you can perform. So I'm going to take away the tricks. I'm going to make sure that it flows well, all of these things. That's part of doing a good simulation-based assessment. So where does that leave us? So when we're developing assessments, when we're answering that email, why are we doing this? How much evidence do I need when I'm doing this to say, yep, what am I going to do with this information? And how comfortable and confident am I in the decision? If I'm just making a decision about whether or not I'm going to give them feedback, I don't really need to be that comfortable. If I'm deciding that they're going to be a paramedic tomorrow, I need to really be comfortable in what I'm doing. Okay. So we've talked about the different places that simulation can do assessment, but let's talk a bit about some new things that are coming around. Because up to this point, assessment in simulation has been, you send your students into a room, there's a mannequin, there's a task trainer, there's a standardized patient, they go forth and do the thing, and you have a little checklist and you note down all the things that they did and all the things that they didn't do, and you talk to them afterward and you sign a little piece of paper and off they go. This brings us to AI. AI is obviously everywhere. It's all anybody's talking about in some ways. AI is not new. Like this AI was really sort of developed in the 1940s when they were trying to crack the Enigma machine in World War II. So it's not necessarily a new concept. It's just that our technology has finally caught up to a place where it's easily accessible. Who's used ChatGPT for something? Right? So now all of you, or almost all of you in this room, have used an AI system to try and generate information about one thing or another. I will fully admit that I generally use it to create terrible limericks. I had it write a country song once. So not necessarily high stakes things, but people are using it for those things. It's becoming part of our consciousness. Some tricky things about AI. Part of it is the definition. There isn't really one. People have tried, but there isn't really one. This is one that I found in one of the education journals talking about AI. And I hate this definition because it says that machines have intelligence. Machines don't have intelligence. Machines fake it really, really well. They're like fourth-year medical students. They can fake it like really, really. And I was a fourth-year medical student. I get it. But that doesn't mean that they're intelligent. These computers don't think. They recognize patterns. They can pull information from all sorts of different places, places that you don't have access to. They can create patterns and think about patterns much faster than humans can. So it's human-like, but they're not thinking. And I think it's an important thing to recognize is that when you're using something like ChatGPT or a deep learning model or a machine learning model, what's actually happening in the background? This is one of the challenges of AI is that even AI experts don't understand what's happening in the background. It's called the black box problem, is that we put some things into the computer and the computer spit out this, we have no idea how it came up with that answer, which seems very strange when you think about computer programming. It should be very, well, I gave it this, so it should give me that. That's not what happens. And it's because these systems have become so complex, you almost need AI systems to understand the AI systems. I strongly recommend everybody after they've done this talk and thought about AI, go watch Terminator, just to remember that this is not necessarily, there are potential consequences here, and I'm only half joking. Okay, some concepts of AI, some terms that you used. AI itself is a sort of a blanket term for all kinds of different things, okay? It can capture things like machine learning. And basically these are machines that are now trying to learn by themselves. They're trying to develop their knowledge base as they go. Natural language processors. These are systems that are attempting to understand, replicate, create, generate the human language. ChatGPT does this. So when you're talking to a GPT system, it's not giving you back a Google search with a whole bunch of pages. It's talking to you, or it's doing its best to talk to you. There are lots of virtual reality systems that can do this, where you can actually put them on and boom, there's a patient, and you can talk to the patient, and the patient will respond to you. And it feels reasonably realistic, depending on the sophistication of the system. Deep learning networks, neural networks that actually get deep into patterns and pattern recognition. So they're not really learning per se, but they're learning in the same way that humans learn. We learn by seeing patterns, and we see them over and over and over and over again until we recognize, oh, that's this pattern. I understand this now, and I understand it well enough when it's not looking quite right, that pattern, and now it looks like this pattern. So it's human-like, but I don't want people to think that just because they've used an AI system that they've actually gotten the I, the intelligence piece. Okay. Please don't try and read the text on this screen. But this comes, I think this is from the AMA, from the American Medical Association. These are all the places that AI is being used in medicine right now. And this is 2 years old. So it's already out of date. But you can see how many places people have already started to integrate AI systems into what we do, just clinically. Breast cancer detection. AI systems are generally better than radiologists at detecting breast cancer on mammograms. They can detect it earlier. Malaria screening. AI systems are often better than clinicians looking at slides to look for types of malaria. Looking at data systems through an ICU. So in the UK, they've got a number of ICUs are hooked up to an AI system that basically captures every piece of data that you can possibly imagine on every patient in the ICU, and then flags the ones that are the sickest based on the patterns that it's seen. And these are things that you and I can't see. I can see that the heart rate is 130 and the blood pressure is a little bit low, but the AI system can tell me that that heart rate hasn't changed in 5 minutes, and that's a bad thing. Or it can tell me that when it sees blood pressure go up and then suddenly go down again, that's a bad thing. It picks up on patterns that, yes, you and I would be able to see if we had the cognitive bandwidth to be able to do it. This is just an education looking at AI. These are the number of publications that have come out using AI, machine learning, ChatGPT, whatever. So let's talk about a couple of these. This was a study using VR, and they had nursing students. And half of them got an avatar that was run by a physician, and the physician was guiding them through a scenario, a sepsis scenario. The other half got a machine. They got an AI system that was telling them what to do as they worked through this scenario. The students that were with the AI system learned more. They knew more at the end of the session. They did it better on their knows how sort of test. Their communication wasn't as good. And scoring wise, it wasn't as good, but they learned more. The systems have good things and bad things. This was a study that was done during COVID, because during COVID, we all had a lot of time on our hands and a lot of students to try and evaluate and no idea how to do it. So these are surgical medical students learning how to suture. And somebody got the idea is like, well, I want you to, so they mailed suture equipment to these students' homes, and they got them to suture and send videos of themselves suturing back to the surgeons to say, oh, you're doing this well, you're doing that well, so they get some feedback. Somebody ran that through an AI system. AI is very good at detecting patterns, and it could tell. So for example, on this side, that's correct technique. This side is incorrect technique. The AI system could tell the difference based on where they were holding their hands and how they were holding instruments. This was a study looking at anaphylaxis. So it was a high realism mannequin-based simulation. I think these were medical students. They were rushing through an anaphylaxis scenario. Patients had a severe allergic reaction. They're doing their best to respond and treat that patient. But rather than having a human rate how they did, they had an AI system do it. And the AI system was almost as good as humans to detect how well they were doing. These systems are becoming incredibly sophisticated. However, they're not perfect. So some challenges. This is a complicated space. I am not going to pretend I am an expert in AI. It's like meeting an expert in quantum mechanics. The first thing they will tell you is, I don't actually understand quantum mechanics, because nobody understands quantum mechanics. But they will teach you how to not understand quantum mechanics, and then you go out into the world. AI is very similar. There's a lot going on behind the scenes that we don't know. Bias. AI systems pull data from the internet. The internet is not a source of truth. I hate to break that to you. But when you've looked at AI systems in the past and some of the things that they've done, there was one very famous example. I think it was Microsoft set up an AI chatbot, and within 24 hours, it was racist because it was pulling things from the internet. Privacy. So if I'm getting an AI system to evaluate my students' videos, I need to upload them somewhere. Okay, what's happening to that data? What happens to my students' data? What's going on with it? And who's ever put something into ChatGPT and got a back? Sometimes they hallucinate. Sometimes you get all kinds of stuff. This is one of my favorite papers because that's their conclusion. I'm very sorry, but I don't have access to real-time information. You should really see a hepatobiliary surgeon about this. They very clearly got ChatGPT to write this for them. It's not perfect. Okay. So where does this leave us? I hope I've convinced you that assessment matters. It's boring, but it matters. And how we assess matters. And using simulation to assess can be effective. We don't know all the details of it yet, but we have some frameworks that we can build on. As we get better at it, we're going to find new technologies and new techniques that we can use. But we have to be careful. We have to be thoughtful about how we engage in these technologies because they often have downsides as well. That's it. Thanks, bud.
Jonathan, thank you so much. Everybody, we have 10 minutes to grab a coffee if you would like, presented by HSAA. You have 10 minutes until you need to please make your way back to the stage for our next keynotes and our next panel discussion. So we will see you back here at 11 o'clock.
routine. They'll have to navigate debris, different sounds, and lots of distractions happening in that place while they're attending to their patients.
The intercollaborative, interprofessional experience is really important to these students. So they get an opportunity to understand what an MRT does within the situation, what a lab technologist does within the situation. So understanding their role within the event and how to work as a team, practice their communication with each other, and deliver that important patient care.
You go in and it is smoke and lights and screaming and sirens, which we have never experienced before. And it's really hard, I think, to focus on just one patient because there's so much going on around you.
I found it really amazing to see all that chaos because it is more what the real world is like compared to our textbooks and what we read and learn about. So it was really interesting to see all that real life stuff, especially when we go off to our placements, that it's not going to be the first time seeing that. We'll have more confidence going into it.
It was a really good learning experience, something that I've never had the opportunity to work or do in the past, like work with other professionals, not actually within the hospital setting.
I think in simulations, one of my favorite things is working with the other students because it is very important in healthcare to know what each other's roles are, because that helps build the trust in that emergency room, transferring care. So I find when I'm in that room with people and I'm just seeing what they're doing, I'm learning. And it's really amazing to see everyone else's confidence in their roles and doing things that I don't know how to do.
Like this is probably in the hundreds of sims at this point between primary care and advanced care. But sim is one of those things where you go through it and you might feel really bad coming out of it because you made so many mistakes. But in the next one you're going in, you built off of it and you get more confident and you feel more competent as well.
on how simulation supports workforce development, accelerates graduate readiness, absolutely, and facilitates foreign credential recognition. Once again, I would like to introduce our session sponsor, Elevate Healthcare, who is going to provide opening remarks and introduce our keynote speakers who are waiting in the wings. And also, just a little note, there will be a Q&A at the end. So if during their keynote you have a thought that you might like to ask a question, absolutely take this opportunity to do so.
Welcome back, everyone. Workforce challenges are top of mind across our globe and really in this country. And simulation offers a path forward. At Elevate Healthcare, we partner with academia, hospitals, and healthcare organizations, as well as government, to design scalable simulation strategies that accelerate readiness, recognition, and response. We're addressing evolving challenges in healthcare every day. And with our Achieve Consulting program, we help guide organizations just like yours through workforce pipeline design and help build or expand simulation programs and centers. We perform clinical gap analysis and targeted high stakes simulation training to meet all of these demands head on with you as your partner. We also recognize that SimTechs, educators, and program leaders need just as much support. That's why we provide tiered training. We offer it virtually, on site for you for convenience, or can even welcome you to our Learning Institute in Sarasota, Florida. Simulation isn't just about education, it's about building confidence, culture, and a competent healthcare workforce for the future. In addition to simulation strategy, we offer outcomes-based education to ensure both knowledge retention and practical application are solved for. Our next keynote speaker today addresses the pressing issues of workforce development. We appreciate their leadership and also the role they play in shaping the strategy behind the healthcare workforce. Please help me welcome Bree Hutchison and Becky Donaldson, who are our next keynote speakers on healthcare workforce development.
Good morning. Hello, everyone. Just testing you can hear me okay back there. I'm projecting. Carmen. Okay, good. Thank you. So I'm Bree Hutchinson. I'm actually a former NAIT grad myself with the paramedic program here. I won't tell you what year, but I'm currently the Assistant Deputy Minister of Health Workforce with Alberta Health for the Government of Alberta. So it's my absolute pleasure to come back here as a former grad to talk to you about what Alberta Health is doing to help address the health workforce massive challenges that we're experiencing today. We really want to talk about our role in helping to support and advance the education of health professionals and experience-based learning through simulation with an entry to practice, but also continuing learning, which I was really happy to hear my friend Norbert back there talking about some of the professional development. Hey, Norb. As health professionals. So we are committed to improving access to world-class healthcare, strengthening our system with innovative patient care models and best practice in health education pathways. So our division is currently working on a number of initiatives that include commitments to improving health workforce planning through policy and innovative programming, as well as policy and strategic development. We're also in partnership with people in the room here today. So looking at employers, post-secondary institutions, some of our corporate partners, et cetera, to help develop and address these big challenges and opportunities within the current health force. Some specifically of the projects working on right now, we do have about $10 million that we've invested in developing and implementing a provincial-wide midwife strategy, which currently has not existed before this. We are assessing alternative methods of care and leveraging all healthcare professionals to work for their full scope of practice. I think as most folks here know, Alberta does have some of the broadest range of scope of practice for health professionals, and we're really looking at how best we can ensure that all professionals are able to work to that entire practice together in team-based care. We're looking towards creating a more collaborative working environment for our healthcare workers by incentivizing regional innovation and increasing our ability to attract and retain the healthcare workers we need. We work with municipalities, post-secondary institutions, and other health providers to help identify strategies to attract and retain healthcare workers here in Alberta, including our rural, remote, and Indigenous communities. Supporting rural health education, rural health workforce recognition, and the attraction and retention of rural health professionals is very important. I'm hoping that through this presentation, we can highlight the current work ongoing by our division and how simulation can align and support the Alberta Health Workforce Strategy. So this is the stuff everybody really wants to know about, our divisional organizational structure and some of the things we represent. So with me and Becky, we'll be speaking about much more interesting things than what I'm talking about right now later. But Becky is the Executive Director of Health Workforce Strategy and Policy. But in the division working with Becky, we also do provider compensation, which usually people really want to talk to me about is how much people get paid and how to get paid more, but I'm not going to talk about that today. We also do health professions, regulation, and physician workforce. And then we have a strategic engagement and compensation policy group that does some negotiations for physicians. And I will turn it over to Becky now.
Good morning, everybody. Becky Donnellan, as Bree said, Executive Director with Health Workforce Strategy and Policy. My work here today is to introduce you to the Health Workforce Strategy that was recently released by Ministry in December of 2024. It is a great body of work that stands on the shoulders of a number of you in the room as participants in putting together the feedback and, go ahead. And addressing what the concept of the framework looks like in order for us to move forward together. I am excited to hear in the room that a fair bit of what our health workforce strategy team has looked at has already surfaced in conversations I've had and what's been already presented. So I think we're at a good time to get moving together, and hopefully out of today's session we'll spark some interest in sharing some of the work that we're doing and the focus that we have within the health workforce strategy, and then we'll be having future discussions together. So purpose of today is to introduce you to the workforce strategy, and I won't line by line it, but do know that it exists and it provides the guidance for our division to look forward to say, well, how do we look at the very significant gaps and opportunities across health, both at the practitioner entry to practice end of the equation all the way to retirement. And so that's part of the scope of what our branch and my team works on, is say, how can we get at this? How can we provide more healthcare workers, more ready healthcare workers, and look at innovation, and as Bree spoke to, really maximize our opportunity in terms of scope of practice that this province is. I'll go out on a limb and say we are certainly leading the case in terms of what the regulatory framework looks like and what scope looks like here from a healthcare perspective. So our workforce strategy is a guiding framework, and it's guided by a couple of principles that you can read, and I will certainly share that. You can find it online on the government website. It's got 5 different key focus areas that I'm just going to introduce to you. It is guided by principles that enable us to, what I want to put on your radar is our principles enable us to have a conversation about how we can test and pilot innovation and new approaches to things, which is what I think we've heard and are pretty excited about here today. Anything there? So this is what our key strategic focus areas include. It was released, as I said, in December of 2024, so you know that we're in the midst of developing our action plan to say, how do we address these focus areas and look at the significant gaps in the system? How can we strengthen the folks that are already in the system? How can we address entry to practice and ongoing education? And how can we retain and grow and move our workforce into the places that we need them to be and that they need to be in? So some of the work that our team did recently was to look at the health workforce strategy and consider simulation in the way that we know it. And our team currently understands simulation. There's a number of us. I'll speak to the fact that I'm a SAIT grad in the paramedic program. I wasn't going to go there, but I will. There's a few of you here. And from a clinical practice perspective, my time was in paramedic practice. I'm pretty grateful to our team. There's 26 or 7 of us. Every one of us are a healthcare practitioner of some sort, whether that's a paramedic, whether that's a registered nurse, a dietitian, an international med grad. We have a really robust team that comes to the table under the health workforce strategy and says, how can we make improvements? What are the things we can do that we know we can change? How can we lean on the years of research and evidence that many of you have developed both at a small scale and a large scale and move our system forward? So the health workforce strategy allows us to have that conversation. And I'll just ask of you today, if something sparks when you're reading this strategy and we don't address it in this discussion, please find us. Bree is available 24/7 for you to find her and have a discussion about your great ideas and information that will help us transform the system through a policy lens, through a program lens, and from a frontline lens. Thanks. So our strategy does look at supporting and retaining folks, as I chatted about. As you can imagine, some of the discussion today already included how can we get just-in-time training, how does simulation play into that? And we know a significant amount of feedback and information from our employers tell us that that's the right space to be looking. We need to strengthen support and retain the folks that are in the system. We do need to attract, a few of you have chatted about it already in a presentation. We need to understand the pipeline, and simulation we think is a really good tool to enable that integration with those that are not yet looking, those that are in high school education, or those that are looking for a career change. Those are all sorts of things from an attract perspective we need to think about. We do need to think about enabling, and that's something that we see simulation as being a solid tool to enable folks from when we think about the concept of scope maximization or overlap and different team-based care. Those are things that simulation we see has a significant solution for us. Strengthening, I've spoken about, that's another key focus area. And innovating and evolving. I think I've heard at least some of the inference here today. We need to think differently going forward. The old models of care and the old models of education and career pathing are different out of necessity and out of, better understanding of the evidence and what we can learn from best practice going forward. So specifically, one sec here. We took a look, one of the bits of work we have done is from our health workforce division team is look at simulation and tag specific priority areas out of the health workforce strategy. There's 16 priority areas that underpin the 5 focus areas. This is a living document. You can imagine that some of these will be higher priority. They'll drop off as we achieve some of those, some of our outcomes, and we'll gain new ones as we move through the next 5 to 10 years and learn more things. But it's exciting to know that we're listening today that out of the 16, our team has looked initially at 9 of the key priorities that we've got ahead of us to consider how simulation can help us achieve these key priorities at a small scale and a large scale across the system. Anything to add?
Yeah, let's see if this comes on. It's not working.
1 second, we'll have.
Nothing. Oh, there we go. It was your running that did it. Thank you. Good fit. So I think one of the things I want to talk about here and brought forward, just hearing some of you speak about, especially when you work in a healthcare profession, I think, and due to some of the resiliency issues that we face and some of the trauma, and not just from big events. And I think, so I'll say as a publicly as a survivor of PTSD, what would have been really helpful for me and what I would love to explore and talk to more of you about is how we can use simulation to help reintegrate people back into careers and then also prepare them before it happens. I don't think people understand who are not healthcare providers that it's not necessarily the big event that causes the trigger. It's the multitudes of small things, the little everyday tragedies you deal with, and the stressors of talking to people when they're at their most critical point of their life. And it would be really great to be able to have some support and training using simulation before people get to that point, so they understand how to respond to someone who's in a stressful situation, even if it's not necessarily subjectively stressful to you, and able to build up some bigger resiliency to help keep people in careers or then help them move forward to different opportunities in the future. So that's something that I really think is important for me when we look at these strategic focus areas and some of those priorities when we're looking at the burnout and workloads, our increasingly complex patients we have. How do we use simulation to give students and also current practitioners the opportunity to learn some different toolkits to help support their practice and maintain careers that they did because they love them?
Thanks, Bree. So I will just share with you that we've categorized at this point the work that we're doing from a challenges perspective, not the opportunities, because there are significant opportunities, that we have significant vacancies and shortages across the system. And I think we are all aware and challenged with that perspective, and whether from a practice side and or an education side. The retention of healthcare workers, including some of Bree's points, you know, how do we prepare and retain folks from entry into the system right out until retirement? And hopefully that's a 45-year span, not a 5-year span, as we're learning. I just wanted to raise awareness. We're very aware of the increasing levels of burnout. We hear that at Health Workforce Division every day. The level of burnout and the consequences of that burnout by individual practitioners across the spectrum in every setting. And that's very much on our radar in terms of how can we focus on that. And then the other piece that we haven't tackled just yet is the increasing volume. We have population growth. That's not going to change. So we have more work to do on a daily basis across the system, and we have increasingly complex healthcare needs that are beyond where we've been, I believe, at the scope and scale. So just know that that's what Health Workforce Division is focused on, and that's what our Health Workforce Strategy Action Plan, I'll say it out loud, we don't have it built, but we're in the midst of that. So that's part of today's discussion with you, is to share it. The Health Workforce Strategy exists, and we're in the development of the action plan. Lots of room for discussion there to say, what do we tackle first, and how do we tackle it? And simulation writ large is at least part of this, a significant part of the solution, we think. I just wanted to revisit our focus at this point, recognizing that we're about a month into creating our plan. So we're, as per regular sort of government work, we look at jurisdictions, we look at the evidence, we look at the existing policy, and then we go out and talk to our partners and say, have we got this right? What's actually happening? And then how can we move forward to make change? So I just wanted to put on your radar some of the things that we've heard and are in our thinking when it comes to how can we address some of these problems with simulation, and that might spark some of your ideas that we don't yet know about. And one of them that is surprising, not surprising, is how high the casual workforce is across the system. And that speaks, we believe at least, to the real significant challenge it is from a life balance and the increasing pressures in the system with high vacancy and high burnout. And the cycle is got significant consequences. So we're very aware of that casual workforce. We work with employers all over the system to understand what that actually means and what the consequences are. We've chatted about increased burnout, and that cycle, I think a few of you have chatted at length about how increased burnout has a direct response on the experience that students have, the access to the systems to complete a program, and then the ongoing consequences of that experience throughout career. And so know that that's part of our thinking right now and focus. There was a great question earlier today about meeting community needs, and Bria's chatted a little bit about the community of our workforce in terms of trauma and PTSD. We are also looking at that and the culturally relevant gaps that we have, we think, both at education all the way through to retirement in terms of people understanding how to meet diverse community needs and certainly Indigenous community needs. So know that that's on our radar, and we are confident that in including simulation in an intentional way can help resolve, at least in part, some of that current state that is a very negative experience for many people. The other piece I want to put on your radar from a community perspective and meeting needs is this team-based care models that we are starting to move into. And we hear integrated care, team-based models, that is upon us, and I don't know that we're ready for it in the way that we need to be. So know that that's a big focus of us, and we see some aspects of simulation being able to help with that. The scope maximization, we have a lot of work to do there. We are so, I will say it, so lucky in Alberta with the previous work that regulators and policy and decision makers have done to get us to a place where we have a very enabling framework. Now we need to maximize it. And so that's what health workforce strategy enables for us. And that's certainly a place that we're looking. The last one I'll end on is the health education piece, recognizing, I don't know, I won't speak for both of us, but certainly from my perspective, I'm so excited to see and hear the changes in health education. I'll say I graduated in 1997 from CAIT in the advanced care paramedic program, and practice education looked a lot different then as it does now. And so we've made great strides. We need to make even greater strides in understanding how to improve that. And the ability and opportunity around simulation, I think, is a solution there, very much so. I just wanted to address a bit of an elephant in the room around the health education piece and the double-edged sword of having access to increased seat expansion across health programs, but the execution of that is very difficult. And I wanted to put that on your awareness because it's certainly on ours. And we're looking forward to working with our partners to say, well, how do we achieve this in a very short period of time? Because we know the seat expansion piece is a very important opportunity that we've got, but with our current state, it will take a lot of innovation and work between us all. And I know I'm out of time, so I'm going to take us to the next slide. I'm going to take 1 minute to talk about resiliency. Again, we just want to raise awareness with you that we're aware of the evidence that is now available that talks about how valuable intentional simulation can be to creating a resilient practitioner when it's built into the program by design. And I'll leave that at that. And certainly happy to have further discussions around this with others. And future collaboration, I'll hand over to Bree. Thank you.
Yeah, so I know we're over time, but so just quickly, I think the big piece we want to leave you with is we are open to listening and hearing from you, the experts, people who experience the system in different ways, to understand how best we can put our health workforce strategy into action. At the end of the day, we serve Albertans. We're here to ensure that the system is ready and available to continue to assist people throughout their entire lifetimes here in Alberta. So thank you so much for the time and look forward to your questions if we have a little bit of time left. Otherwise, you can reach out to us after. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, if you have a question, please make your way to the microphone. Now is your opportunity. We have a couple of minutes. All right, we have someone.
Good morning to both of you, and thank you for the presentation. It's always important for us as Albertans to hear what the government is doing for us and with us and by us and all the rest of that. So as a proud registered nurse here in Alberta, I just came from the Alberta Association of Nurses conference in Calgary. So if any of you are nurses and haven't attended, welcome you for the next one. One of the things that when we talk about advocacy, and all of those things that you have listed there are certainly important, but we need, when we talk about advocacy, we need to be listening to the healthcare professionals, and I'm talking now about registered nurses, psychiatric nurses, all the different nurse practitioners. We're still not hearing the voice of the nurses that are at the grassroots. So I know there's a lot of things we need to address when it comes to burnout and the stress that's in the system. But I think a lot of the solutions are going to come if we're actually listening to what the nurses are telling us at the bedside. So, and so we need to have some kind of a mechanism whereby we're doing that. And one of the things is there are groups of nurses. We have different groups of, as the past president of the Canadian Neuroscience Nurses, we have specialty groups that we could be talking to the government about. I mean, even thinking about having in technology, and we have the students coming out of all kinds of health professions that have had simulation. They're used to it. They could be leaders at the bedside if we had simulation with those experienced nurses who've had the bedside experience. And as I said in a talk that I gave recently, communication skills are as important as clinical skills for all nurses and all healthcare professionals. So we need to be able to communicate as well as practice our skills. So thanks for carrying on the journey.
Thank you.
So, and just so for your information too, we do meet regularly with the Alberta Association of Nurses. We have regular meetings actually with the Nursing Leadership Network specifically, which reflects post-secondaries, the regulatory colleges, as well as the associations, so that we can hear feedback. And that's just one example to hit on, but we do make sure we're available to hear, and from frontline providers as to, well, I'm a former frontline provider. Becky still is registered, but very, very interested in that experience so we can improve. So thank you. Yeah.
Just want to say thank you so much for your presentation. I'm Jennifer Brennan, the Associate Dean at SAIT. So that was your woos in the audience there. I am a proud MRT, and we at SAIT and I know here at NAIT teach all allied health programs. So really excited to see the representation from the government from a variety of different professions. Really appreciated the presentation today. And so just wondering about next steps. I think we're really excited about what you've put forward and what does this look like for post-secondaries, but then also, you know, other areas that are looking from an educational perspective on some of these pieces. So yeah, just next steps. So when are your actions coming out and how do we become part of that?
Well, thank you. I'll start with the last part. We need you to be part of this. That's where we're at that intersection to start having the discussions with partners and stakeholders to answer the question of how do we do this? What should we be doing around these pieces, generally and specifically? So we have got a plan of attack that just needs some finessing to get us to the table to start having a focused discussion around that piece. But the action plan needs to be developed in consult with folks, if that helps.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you. Look forward to it.
Thank you so much, Bree and Becky. It is time for our next panel discussion. This is presented by Applied Pharmaceutical Innovation. So let's give a warm welcome and invite our panelists to the stage. Have a seat. Here's what we're going to do, panelists. I will introduce you, and you will have 30, 45 seconds to tell everybody a little bit about you. Does that sound good? Okay, I'll start on the end there. Brandy Pollock is here from McEwen. Brandy.
Hello, I'm Brandy Polyak, and I'm extremely nervous to be in front of everybody. I feel like I need a simulation to practice for this today. I am a registered nurse. I'm also an assistant professor at McEwen University, and I teach mainly in the psychiatric nursing program.
Wonderful. And just a reminder to all of the panelists, microphone up here. And I appreciate the honesty. You're like, I'm so nervous to be up here. I said to Brandy backstage, I'm like, Brandy, you know your stuff. All of you know what you're talking about when you're up here. Okay, let's please give a warm welcome to Jason LaBerge, AHS, eSIM, and Human Factors. Hello, Jason.
Hello, good morning, everybody.
Oh, you got a few woos out there.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, so I'm the director of the eSIM Provincial Simulation Program at Alberta Health Services. We operate out of about 17 simulation labs throughout the province. We support around 2,500 simulation sessions involving around 25,000 participants per year. And I do have a human factors background, so I've also used simulation for system improvement in healthcare, oil and gas, and transportation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Next on the panel, we have Tino Villatoro. Did I say that right?
Nailed it. Nailed it.
Nailed it. Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
And Tino, you are a program chair here at NAIT. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I'm the program chair of the Medical Laboratory Assisting Program here at NAIT. I teach across the diagnostic lab programs. I'm also the vice chair of the Canadian Society for Medical Laboratory Science and a practicing medical laboratory technologist.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. And last but certainly not least, we have Carl Demore with ACC LXT. Carl, tell us about you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much, Carmen. So by background, I'm a paramedic, so still practicing clinically, but I have the great honor now to actually be working with the combined laboratory and X-ray profession in Alberta. I work with the regulatory agency, so that's where I work currently, which has a great relationship with NAIT because we only have one program for the whole profession in all of Alberta, and it's here. There's actually only 2 programs in all of Canada. So with this being kind of like the main one, because in everywhere else in Canada right now, other than one province that started 3 days ago to regulate is Nova Scotia, there's no other seat for really the CLXT profession anywhere.
So what we're discussing today right now with this panel is workforce readiness. So maybe Carl, I'll start with you if you wouldn't mind. One thing we haven't discussed too much is about the interprofessional practice, the training, getting students together from all disciplines to really get ready for these real world scenarios. So talk about the importance of this, maybe what some of the challenges are, just the interprofessional training.
Sure, not a problem. So as I explained, my background is paramedic, and you might say, well, what does a paramedic know about working with the CLXT profession? And one of the key elements there is that I've worked with CLXTs as a paramedic because CLXTs work in rural, remote kind of facilities, and in those places where an intercollaborative team is so important to healthcare because you only have finite amount of human resources helping. I.e., you have the paramedics working closely with the nurses, closely with physicians, and closely with lab and X-ray professionals. And that's the team that envelops that patient in those critical hours to get them to a more kind of critical center. And one of the elements I think that's very important in simulation that you can really simulate very well is that interprofessional collaboration that happen at the bedside between all of these professions. And it is one of the key elements that, through simulation, you can simulate that. It's not a guarantee that these things will happen in practicum and in a practicum of a student, but you can certainly simulate it very well and get the professions working together and to collaborate.
Have you had a scenario where a student has come back once they're out in the workforce and they've come back and said, oh, I'm so grateful for that training because this is something that has happened to me in my job?
Yeah, I mean, I think simulation is being used a lot like that. I think we still have some ways to go, I would say, because I think there are still elements of practice that, you know, we anticipate or we hope is going to happen in practicum that maybe is not fully happening in practicum that we could simulate in the classroom and really focus on. And I think that that would help the students a lot, because doing a practicum, again, doing a practicum in a big city might be different than a small rural or remote center, and your exposure as a student is going to be different. So thinking of those elements and saying, what can we simulate, might be really important.
Jason, I might hop over to you then, since we're talking about rural communities. Tell us about the work that you're doing, bringing simulation out to those areas.
Yeah, so if simulation is intended to support the workforce from the moment they're hired to the moment they retire, it needs to be accessible. And one area where it's not accessible enough is in rural communities. So one of the things we're doing in the eSIM program is we're sort of developing a strategy to make it more accessible. And that includes everything from a mobile simulation program, which has been operating for quite some time, but we're looking at how do we add more funding and capability to that program. So bringing equipment and facilitators out to rural communities. But maybe more importantly, or equally as important, is building local infrastructure for simulation. So we're partnering with communities, foundations, education institutions to basically build up space and equipment in those local communities so that people don't have to travel to access simulation. And so I believe in order for simulation to support the workforce, it needs to be easy to access. And that is incredibly important in rural areas. And I believe there's a big gap there right now.
Is funding one of the biggest gaps for that?
Certainly funding's a part of it. A big challenge is just the geography of Alberta, to be honest with you, and figuring out where, you know, what communities do you pick to build up the infrastructure so that it makes sense. It's probably not feasible, at least in the short term, to imagine having simulation facilities in every rural hospital. So figuring out which ones make the most sense, what's the catchment area that's reasonable. So there's definitely some logistical challenges, but funding's definitely part of it.
Tino, I know you do a lot of work getting students ready for their placement. So tell us about the work that's being done here at NAIT and how things are changing in this world when it comes to student placements.
Yeah, medical laboratory assistants, we like to think are the face of the lab. A lot of times they're the ones at the patient's bedside, the ones interacting with them. And they're often placed in situations that they may not be fully ready for in their clinical placement. And we say that they're with us for a good time, but not a long time. It's a very short, very intense program. And getting them as ready as we can to hit the workforce and to hit their clinical placement is important. We added interprofessional health simulations, and we're looking at adding more simulations to meet the evolving needs of the profession. The competency profile has recently changed, and with that comes new competencies that even current medical laboratory assistants aren't performing at the bench or at the patient's bedside. And so we need to find a way to prepare them for that and to meet those competencies so that they can work to their full scope, even if the profession's not quite there yet at this point.
So could simulation be used towards those clinical placement hours at some point?
Well, what's interesting is our national society that crafted the competency profile also provides some guidelines as to what can be simulated, what has to be done in clinical placement, which really helps educators sort of meet those needs where we are right now. And they work with employers and with industry representatives to determine what can be effectively and safely done in simulation versus what needs to ultimately be done in clinical placement. And so we're working within that framework for sure.
Can I jump in?
Please jump in.
Tino, you bring a good point. So the good point I think that you bring is the whole element that, you know, the last speakers, keynote speakers spoke about the whole idea of expanding and practicing to full scope. And you're talking about your profession and the profession you represent, which is MLA, and the changing scope of practice. When I think of CLXTs, I think about expanding scope of practice as well for CLXTs, because that's a kind of hot topic right now. Working with MRTs, working with MLTs and MLAs, and what does that look like for the future of CLXTs? But we have a whole entire group of people that are already out there practicing. And so if we're going to expand the scope of practice, what's the role of simulation in also upgrading those people that are existing now? And what are we doing to leverage that? I would even go further and I would say, what about using simulation to train mentors, to train preceptors, to train the future leaders of the health professions? What are we doing to leverage simulation in those ways?
I think that's like such a good point. I wanted to make comments about everything you guys said. The RPN program is very similar to your short program as well, where I like to say we're fast and furious. So short and sweet and fast and furious. And there isn't the ability to actually teach them everything they need to know before going out. We try and cover all the fundamentals and we try and capture all the skills, the soft skills and the psychomotor skills that they might need to get out in order to practice, but there isn't everything with those expanding like roles and the expanding competencies. And so I think your idea of bringing people back and using simulation to, again, help with those increasing roles would be such a great idea.
I think it would need the partnership. So Bree and Becky, if they're still around, but this is where a partnership needs to be created further, right? I mean, we have to explore the whole network, the whole community of practice.
The registering bodies as well. Sorry to cut you off, but
yeah, but I mean, government, educators, employers, regulators, all have to come together and collaborate. I mean, if we could do that, we can envelop, even capture some continuing competence elements, you know, from a regulatory perspective with simulation that maybe we're not right now. Right now, we're really relying on reflective practice, you know, from continuing competence. But what's the role of simulation in continuing competence even, and ongoing continuing competence? So those are other thoughts.
Is there still a bit of an issue of buy-in? Some people wondering if this is a tool that could be used in that way. Do you think, is that part of the issue?
I mean, we see that in eSIM, and I think it's getting better, where people have had more positive experiences with simulation, and it's feeling less like they're being judged, and it's more like a learning environment. And just anecdotally, what we're seeing with the new workforce is because they are exposed to SIM so much more in their program, they almost expect to have access to SIM once they join the workforce. And I think that's a really important shift, because they're starting from a place of recognizing simulation is beneficial and is essential to their professional development, which gets into the whole retention thing that was mentioned in the keynote just before this. So I think it's essential.
Yeah, hands down, the number one thing we hear in our work placement surveys from students is that they want more simulation. And so it doesn't surprise me to hear that those graduates then expect simulation once they're working out there, because I think we've converted them based on that.
Yeah, we hear exactly the same thing from our students too, because as much as we'd like to implement more, but it's the resources, it's the facilities, it's what we have access to. So sometimes that limits us. And simulation takes a lot of work. It's a lot of time. It's a big investment. But that's exactly what we hear too. We want more, because they find it so helpful.
Brandy, could you give us an idea of what simulation looks like in your field, working in the mental health field? What's a scenario that you work with the students on to help prepare them?
Well, we work, I guess, on a lot of communication skills, right? So we do the psychomotor skills, but we also focus, again, what people would call soft skills. I don't like to call them that because I feel like they're foundational skills that everybody needs. And it kind of makes it sound like they're not, right? When we say soft. But our biggest gap that we kind of see is sometimes isn't knowledge, but it's that confidence to have some of those conversations. And so one simulation that I'm a part of is with standardized patients, and it's when we go through a suicide risk assessment. And so it's one thing for students to know the questions to ask on paper, right? It's really easy to read them off and really easy to read them even to themselves or practice with one of their friends or fellow students. But it's a totally different situation when you're actually sitting in front of somebody, even if it's just an actor, and actually asking the question, are you having thoughts of ending your life? That's a hard question to ask, and sometimes it's a hard answer to hear. And so that simulation, what I really see is them getting used to asking those questions and becoming familiar with it. But then as they do it again or reflect on it, it's reflecting on some of the feelings that come up when they're actually asking those questions and having those tough conversations. And it's realizing that some of those big feelings that they're feeling actually impacts how they're interacting with their patients, and it affects how the rest of the interview goes. And so I feel like they take away a lot from that, but we do a lot of that with our mental health students, and looking at those tough conversations that they might not get a chance to do in some of their clinical placements.
Yeah, Brandy, I was going to comment that I agree with you from a fundamental perspective, that those skills are sometimes the skills that are the most important, but also the skills that are quickly overlooked.
100%.
Because, we focus on call it the hard skills, but the actual physical, skills, and we don't focus as much on the whole aspect of communication, which is where, again, the interprofessional element that we discussed earlier, that's where I think you can get the greatest kind of benefit from, is the interprofessional communication that happens. I think that's the key element.
Yes, and I would love to even see that with like the interprofessional and interdisciplinary. And I know some like schools and areas are doing that really well. At McEwen, again, sometimes we're in a little bubble and we just kind of silo ourselves, and we do things just with our programs. But I would like to even see pulling in like higher management and management into some of those scenarios and some of those simulations, right? And thinking about conflict resolution and how do you handle a disagreement between, two colleagues, and what does that look like? And how do we kind of navigate that, right?
Yeah, and I think that interaction between a preceptor, a student, a mentor, and a student, or a new employee, a novice employee, what does that look like?
So one thing that came to mind, Brandy, when you were talking about involving management, is now you're starting to engage other levels of the system. And so one, I guess, idea I want to put out there is, we talk about simulation for workforce readiness, but what about simulation to make sure the system's ready for the workforce? And Tim, I think, did a great job of highlighting it in his opening remarks that, system improvement simulation is a thing. And I think it's an incredible part of this overall puzzle to make sure that the system is not only ready for, the new workforce, the new generation, but the existing workforce as well. And there's tremendous opportunity to improve the system so that the people that are in it working can work as effectively as possible. So I don't want that to get lost. And maybe it's the human factors specialist in me talking, because that's what I've done for 25 years. But using simulation for system improvement is a big part of the puzzle.
We've talked about how simulation right now really is for those entry-level positions, and I love the idea and the conversation around using it to advance the skills, to get stronger throughout your career. How far away are we from that? Is there anywhere in the world that's already doing that you know of? Or how far away in your mind are we from that idea?
I mean, I'll jump in. I think we're on the right path. And I think we have a sense of where we want to be, but personally, I don't think we're there quite yet. There definitely are challenges. I mean, funding is one, and access and some of those other things as well. But I do believe we're on the right path and heading in the right direction.
Someone had brought up a really interesting point that I wanted to put out there and see if anybody wanted to jump in about how simulation can support foreign trained professionals in obtaining their credentials. Is this something that's happening, or is this something that should be happening? Any thoughts out there?
I mean, I can speak to what Alberta Health Services is doing. I mean, I don't know that it's necessarily for credentialing, but there is to support the internationally educated nurses that are coming into the province, there is a simulation component, but I think it's more as a step towards orientation and building, comfort and familiarity with protocols and things like that. It's less about an assessment per se, but it's definitely being used. And the feedback we've received so far is they wouldn't want to do it without it.
Yeah, I can jump in too. I work a little, like I work mostly in psych nursing, but I dabble in the BSCN and I dabble in the BCN, which is the Bridge to Canadian Nursing Program at McEwen. And we use simulation with those students that are coming in as well. And some of the feedback that I've heard is it's not so much about competency because they're already nurses back home, wherever they were, right? So they're coming in with a lot of skills and a lot of experience. It's more about looking at things through a Canadian lens and a Canadian healthcare lens. So it's not so much about competency, but more about orientation, if I had to kind of put a word to it. Again, it's not that they don't know what they're doing, it's how are things done differently here and what are the different expectations, right? And it's building that confidence so they really feel like they're ready to rejoin and belong in the systems over here and feel like ready to kind of hit the ground running, right?
Wouldn't that be neat? Your orientation is like, okay, we booked your time at CAMS. This is where you're going to go to get ready for your job.
Yes.
Right? That would be wonderful. I'm going to throw this at each of you to please let us know where you see simulation going in the future. If you could kind of say your hopes and your dreams for this area when it comes to preparing students for the workforce. And Carl, I'll start with you. What would you like to see in the future?
Well, I think what I'd like to see, I already kind of mentioned, it's the whole aspect of really looking at those effective domain kind of skills. So the whole, what you might call soft skills, but looking at those and saying, what can we simulate? What can we simulate well? And maybe relieve some of the pressures around the whole aspect of practicum.